Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. It's actually happening. It's starting. It's crazy. Hi guys, my name is Adeolua and welcome to the very first episode of Losing the Plot podcast. Ah I'm actually doing it. It's been, something I wanted to do for a long time, a very long time, but I did still kind of do have a fear of being another man with a podcast microphone. The stereotype has been very unbecoming. So I've kind of talked myself in and out of doing it, but I am thankful for all my friends and people that have been like, you should do it, you should do it, you should do it. Especially because I promise you, this will not be a podcast where I talk about relationship advice or what men should be doing and what women should be doing. Actually, none of my business. So I just want to start. I feel like it's very important that I start out by saying that this is going to be a very safe space for learning and community, and yeah, just that, really learning and community. And losing the plot, why losing the plot? I have a very interesting mind where my mind can start out thinking one thing, and I would just travel to so many different places and different spaces within that same time. And very often I start out with one concept and I lose the plots in my attempt to think of one thing and I go to the other. And I also, from when I was a teenager, just have such an endearment and respect for popular culture and the things that make us tick, as it relates to media and as it relates to our collective consciousness as people in big and small ways. I think that many people who are maybe not as enamored with entertainment as I am seem to or might unintentionally belittle the influence or the impact that the things that we consume have on us and what they mean about where we are as a people in this point in history, and how it will be looked back on from the future, and how history can be cyclical, and how we are just living a different version of something that has already happened. Because I also do love history as well, and I think that popular culture is such a good pulse check on all of that. And since I was 16 and 15, 14, I've been going down rabbit holes of learning about just history and the world, but specifically through the arts, through music, obviously, through films, through art, through different things. And I think that has been very helpful to me in how I understand the world and how it has shaped my opinions and thoughts as an adult. And yes, so I really just want this podcast to be a place where I pick a topic or something about popular culture. It could be music, it could be film, it could be a rollout, it could be a person, it could be a phenomenon, and just talk about it through my knowledge of it. Obviously, I am big on research, so I won't come here with opinions of or think pieces that are not research the intent that I want to research them. And I will obviously be sharing my opinions, and I'll make that very clear what is my opinion and what is facts or researched. And yeah, and just share that with you guys and see what you think. And always looking for engagement, always looking for people that have different opinions, but I mean respectfully. Like, I would do want to keep this space a place where you can say I disagree with that, or I think you're misinterpreting that or overinterpreting that, which is something that will be, I believe, a common thread in this podcast. Is that what that person actually meant by that, or is that you overinterpreting it? Because a lot of times we assign meaning to art, which I think is why art is so beautiful, is that one person can write a song or write a lyric or make a melody about something specific, and then you receive it from where you are in your own life and you assign a meaning to it. So yeah, so that's long and short of what Losing the Plot is going to be about, and I'm really excited to get into it. Okay, so my first episode of Losing the Plot, I'm so excited. But my first episode is going to be about someone who I've loved since I've known, parasocially, of course, and someone that's also very instrumental to me making music. And I've just followed his career for the longest time. Like he's like my favorite artist. He is my favorite artist in the world. Like, he just exemplifies everything that I love about music and love about humanity and growth and everything in so many different ways. And being a Yoruba boy, even though my Yoruba accent can be questionable from time to time, he's just like I think for most Yoruba boys like me, he's like our Superman. Like he's literally he's our superhero. He's very larger than life in that way. And I'm talking about no one else but the one and only big fish AG baby himself, Adekunle Gold. But I wanted to start my first episode talking about Adekunle Gold because when I think that I know a decent amount about Adekunle Gold. Maybe I'm not the Adekunle Gold historian, but I know a lot. Again, I followed his career. I remember when I was doing my first internship at Nigerian Tribune in Ibadan in like 2014, 2015, one of those years. And some of my first articles were about his music and his trajectory. I just find him to be so inspiring. Even from then, I was just really obsessed with him. And okay, let me go down my Adekunle Gold fan club fan club moments because I really do have a storied history with Adekunle Gold. When I started making music in 2013, 2012, and I wanted to make African inspired music but make it pop in a whatever way I could. I was just really love the African rhythms, and Afrobeat at that time wasn't really Afrobeat at that time was very pop influenced, so it obviously still had the multi-percussive elements, but it was very pop influenced. But being a Yoruba boy again, just growing up around those sounds in church and all of that, I had an endearment towards it. And then I just had an idea about how I wanted to look. I wanted my music to sound. Again, I didn't have maybe the know-how or the skill to do it at the time, but I just had a vision of it. And there came Adekunle Gold, and he literally looked and sounded like what I wanted to make. It was insane. And even more insane to me was that every time that as an artist, as a musician, or as a person, or as a creative, my mind would shift into something like a different lane of thinking, or I would add on things in my head, he would do it. Like, it was crazy. Like, every time I'd be like, okay, I feel like now maybe I'll try this, or I find this to be interesting, or it just be thoughts in my mind. I'll look up on Instagram, there it was, done by him. Very well. So it was just always like, oh my God, this is like, and that inspired me obviously to start putting my own ideas into the work. I'm like, you know what, apparently these ideas are like, they drop them in the moment, and it's kind of like fastest fingers first to catch it, first to do it. And he's catching it really quickly, and he's doing it really quickly. But obviously as the years have gone by, and as I've made more of my own music, I made more of my own art, I've been able to, kind of I make my own lane, but still very, very influenced by him, and I'm proudly very influenced by him. His growth is just so insane to me. And down my Adekunle Gold fandom history, before we get into it, I was at the listening party for his debut album Gold. Yes, I was covering for Ovation magazine. I made sure I was on that assignment. When I was working at NetNG, I went to the listening party for About 30, where he gave out the roller for that album. Maybe another day I'll get into the roller for About 30 and why I think About 30 is like one of the most important Afrobeat albums Afro pop albums to come out in the past decade, and why that's an important album to his career trajectory. We'll get to that at some other day, at some other point. But I was at the album scene for About 30. And then I've seen him twice. I've seen him twice in Canada. And yeah, like it's just someone that I love and adore. And every time I get to, or I can't see him live, he's just such a consummate 100% live performer, just a star. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, so I started my first episode of this podcast, I just wanted to start with someone that I was familiar with, a topic that I was familiar with, a topic that I could obviously go on hours and hours talking about, but I wanted to, kind of anchor my conversation on the release of his latest album, Fuji. So this debut episode, is called The Calculated Creation of Fuji. And just following Adekunle Gold's career from time, he's just someone that has always been very intentional about what he's going to do. And I think that I would always say that I think that he has been criminally underrated for years, but I'm happy that everybody's kind of catching on, and thankfully we have proof we day ones, we have proof that we've been day ones. You know what I'm saying? Like we've been here, okay? We've been here. But I really I'm glad that everyone is really kind of catching the wave and just catching the wave of seeing him grow so intentionally. But with this latest album with Fuji, I think that it's important to talk about it. And even if, this is like, I'm sure that I'm not, at this point, it becomes so big that this is not a novel thought to have about how impressive the work is or the person is. But I think that it's important to document um an artist like this and their growth just for posterity. So even if, I don't know how many people are going to listen to this, I'm hoping a lot of people listen to it, but even if it's not the entire world that listens to this, that one day someone is going to need some type of reference to his career and someone needs some type of reference to this moment in time that we're experiencing. I'm very happy, rather I would say, to be one of the people that is like making a mark into this, because when his Netflix documentary or docu-series comes out, when someone needs to do research and like, let's find um let's find who has done any work on research on this Fuji album. I'm glad I'm one of those people that will have taken my time out to this, because I think it's a very important moment in just Nigerian music history, and especially in his career. So just a quick recap. So Adekunle Gold's debut album came out 2016, Gold. Then we had About 30 in 2018, Afropop Volume 1 in 2020, Catch Me If You Can in 2022, and Tequila Ever After in 2023. So that would make Fuji his sixth album. And from his regular album scheduling, we see that it takes about 2 years to put an album out, or 2 years between albums. So 2016 to 2018, 2018 to 2020, 2020 to 2022, and 2023 to 2025. Which doesn't mean that, which I will get to, I believe that he's had Fuji in progression or in concept creation for a while. But I think that the consistency is important. I think the consistency is a good place to start. And again, this podcast is called Losing the Plot. So you really need to follow the neuro spicy vibes. So as we're going from one plot, we're going to the other. So you really you got to stay with me here. Like, you can have it playing in the background, but you might miss something if a line passes. But I think the consistency is important. And I'm speaking to this as a mission as an artist, is that you can't make the best art that you will ever make without just making art all the time. We don't get to Fuji without obviously Gold, but we don't get to it without About 30. We don't get to it without Afropop Volume 1. We don't get to it without Catch Me If You Can. We don't get to it without Tequila Ever After. Each of those albums played a role in helping him know where he wants to go. And as an artist that pivots very quickly and consistently between genres and between styles and between personas, it's very important that you explore to the max each of those style personas and everything, so you can make the best thing that you can ever make, so you can have your highest debuting album 6 albums in. And it's because of that I find it to be very inspiring, because I think in this day and age, in our current media diet, there is such an onus on starting from 1 billion, just like starting out as Beyonce, but not starting out as Beyonce in 1996 or 1998 or even 2000, starting as Beyonce in like 2013, which is, again, you don't get to Beyonce in 2013 without all the previous Beyoncés. And I think that his consistency, just those putting out a record every 2 years, is insane. It's a lot of work. I always like to say that making a bad song takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to make even a bad song, much less a great one, much less a great album. And Adekunle Gold is obviously an album artist. So I feel like starting with his consistency is very important, because it shows a very clear path to evolution. So because I want to keep the dialogue of this podcast as academic as I can, I want to always start out the episode with a core thesis. So that is just going to be, again, this is losing the plot. So we will lose the plot many times as the hour goes on, but the core thesis is going to be just kind of the thing that I want to kind of keep going back on to anchor. So my core thesis throughout this conversation is that Adekunle Gold's Fuji is a master class in long-term artistic strategy, which just is a very specific way of saying that it's not a sudden pivot. It is literally, like I said, from starting up, we're talking about his consistency. It's a result of years of owning your craft and patiently waiting for the right time. And just starting off from that thesis of this is a masterclass in long-term artistic strategy, one of the clear ways that we see that in Fuji is that this album has a lot of samples. Again, something that we'll get into as time throughout this episode, but it takes a while to clear samples. I don't know how much you who are listening know about the music industry, especially the kind of samples that he chose for this record. Big hitters. I'm talking about BBHMM by Rihanna. We're talking about a Bill Withers song. Like, these are big songs that an estate needs to clear. Everybody that wrote on the song needs to clear, and clear on multiple levels. So my theory, I don't know this for a fact, but my theory is that he's been working on this record for at least 3 or 4 years, just because of how long it would have taken to clear all these samples. Which would mean that for some of these songs, the song would have to have been at least mixed and mastered to a certain point at least 3 years ago, so that they can show it to them and say, oh, this is the song, this is how I want to use your sample, please clear it. And that is insane, because to my second point to artists and musicians and creatives listening is that great work can take time. And that's something that I've learned personally this year as a musician myself, is that I had so many plans for this year. Oh my God, I had all these plans, all these things I was going to do this year. And a lot of the reasons why those things didn't come to fruition were really out of my control. And I really beat myself up over it for a long time. But then I realized that if I wanted to be the greatest work I've done or the best work possible, I really do need time to chip away at it, sleep on it, wake up, like it, love it, hate it, take it back for edits, re-record, rewrite, and all those things. And that's again something that is not as encouraged in today's media diet. There's such an onus on release 4 songs every month, do this, do that, release the snippets to get the sound trend on TikTok. These are not in themselves bad things or bad strategies, but sometimes they do take away from the fact that art, the best art, needs to be consistent and it can take time to do. So that's another lesson I think that we can take from Fuji, is that this is his best debuting album. It charted on the global album scale very, very early on, and it's because of that. It's because you can hear in the production, in the writing, in the singing. Oh, the singing, the growth in singing in Fuji is amazing. I think my most played Adekunle Gold album before Fuji or before this moment in time would definitely be Gold, just because Gold feels, again, at the end of the day, I'm just a Yoruba boy, I'm just a boy, and Gold is just such a comfortable listen. It's such an easy listen, it's such a familiar listen. From the first listen to now, it's very timeless. And when I listen to Fuji now, I hear the evolved version of Gold. Even though they are 2 different albums, but in feeling, this feels just more refined. Like when I go back and I listen to Gold, I'm like, oh my God, you don't know what you're going to become in the next couple of years, because Fuji is so refined, especially from the vocal production aspect. It's just clean takes, really, really kind of singing that you can only do if you have been working on your singing. Does that make sense? There's some artists that you listen to the album, they're like, okay, well, they got into the studio, they had an idea and they recorded it, and that's cute, and the song is great. But there are some albums that you listen to, and you're like, okay, we recorded a demo and we're like, let's go back and re-record that. Let's comp that a little bit better. Let's put some breath in that line. Let's sustain that note. Let's put some vibrato here. Like, you can hear that even in the stacks. And these are so good. The mix and matching is immaculate. And yeah, just that immaculate growth that is so intentional. It's one of the reasons why I love this one so much. Okay, back to, again, we're losing the plot. I really love the title of my podcast because it just perfectly encapsulates my brain. We're going to do this like back and forth in a lot, but I've warned you, it's in the title, guys. It's in the title. I'm losing the plot. We are losing it and we're getting back to it. So, back to my thesis of all things. I've talked about the claiming of the samples, and one of the things I adore, my favorite artists in the world are the people that are able to build a world around their album releases and around their eras. And Adekunle Gold is so good at that. He does it with persona. So with Fuji, it's Big Fish, but we've had AG Baby. We've had there's someone else I'm missing. With AG Baby, there's Big Fish. Um I can't remember. There's one I'm missing. I can't think of it right now. It's kind of escaped my head. But if you're an Adekunle Gold, you know that he has had different personas over the years, and he builds a very specific word around them using fashion, especially using hairstyles and fashion to really drive home the point of the era that we're in. And these eras change again every 2 years or so, and they come to him naturally. So I do feel the very organic shift in his presence and presentation from project to project. It never feels forced. It never feels like something that executives sit down in a room to put together. It always feels like a natural evolution. But when he arrives at a moment of a change, he does commit to it to the upteenth degree, and it's always just so remarkable. And with Fuji, that's definitely there for sure. And one of the things I love about Fuji is how, for an album called Fuji, and we'll talk about the album title in a little bit. For an album called Fuji, he doesn't. There's a very cliche way they could have gone about this, and if you're in Nigeria, if you're Yoruba, you know what I'm talking about. We're going to call the album Fuji. We're going to be wearing maybe lace all the time. There's just a very cliche way that and I know some artists that if they were going to go for a concept like this would have leaned into the Fuji to the point where you just want to throw it out. But he doesn't do that. Everything is still intentional. Everything still calls back to the world of Fuji, but not in the very on the nose direct way. It's still very evolved. It's still very present. The album cover is a very great capturing of this. The chair he sits on, the way he sits, just the pose and that whole imagery is Fuji, but not in a knock it over the head and kill it till it's die and bury the horse kind of way, which I personally really appreciate, because I wouldn't have been able to take that much, because Adekunle Gold in himself is already so Yoruba. You know what I'm saying? So like if you embody a phenomenon like a culture so authentically in yourself already, killing it with an over dramatization of the same, it would be so heavy handed. We all like, no one is thinking Adekunle Gold is comes from UK or New York or Spain. Like he's just such a Yoruba man. Within all of it, with everything that he does, is just so, even the timbre of his voice, his texture, his look, his genetics, is just such a Yoruba man that going for a concept like Fuji does not require any world building that is just killing over the head. Doesn't require that. And I'm thinking of Beyonce's Cowboy Carter as well, where again there in the album, within the world of the albums, now not the visual, but within the world of the album, yes, it's a country album and it has country references, but it's Cowboy Carter never gets to a point where it knocks the current country sound. It's very inventive, and that's what I love about Fuji as well. Is it says this is what I'm referencing, but I want to reinvent. I want to show you a different way to understand this concept. So as we continue, I'm going to keep talking about the world building, and I want to talk about again how great art takes time and refinement, and we'll talk about this visionary rollout. So let's get started. Okay, so we're going to talk in parts, and part one, I want to talk about the long game, and I've talked about great art taking time, but I think I want to go back a little bit and talk to you about Fuji itself, understanding the foundation of Fuji. So it's very important for you and I to understand the genre and ages concept, and then we'll talk about the discourse around him calling the album Fuji. So I always used to wonder why, if you are Yoruba or if you're just Nigerian, you know that a lot of Fuji musicians are Muslim, and I always used to wonder why, because I was just like, most times when I hear someone is a Fuji musician, they have a very distinct Muslim name. And for those of you that don't know, Adekunle Gold was originally Muslim. For those that know him, you know that his name is Almoruf. It's Adekunle Almoruf Kosoko. So he is originally Muslim. I believe he converted when he was young, because I know he used to go to church, which is and sing at churches, which is where he met his best friend Sheon. So, yeah, Adekunle Gold. So this is a word that is very familiar to him and a word that he's very in know of. But yeah, so I used to always wonder why. I'm just saying that to again connect the dots of like a lot of Fuji musicians are Muslim or have Muslim names, and that's because um Fuji as itself evolved from an Islamic. Now I'm going to butcher this. I really don't know how to pronounce this properly, so please don't kill me. But Islamic were, I don't know how to pronounce it, but I think it's were. Would sound like that's not the correct pronunciation. So I think it's Islamic were music, and this music was played during Ramadan, and it evolved from Lagos. Again, I think Gold is from Lagos. Are we seeing the point here? Are we connecting the dots here? But this genre evolved from Lagos in the 1960s, and it was played during Ramadan, and the core element of Fuji is that it's energetic. So it's energetic beats, and it's again that's Yoruba percussion that is multi-layered and has call and response vocals. Is very core to it, and this is again something that is a key tenet in Afro beats and most African genres in general is multi percussion and energy and tempo. And obviously, this kind of genre fits so perfectly in at parties because you're at the party, people are getting late at the party, they want to move, they want to dance, and Africans love to dance. That goes without saying, obviously. So then, that's the foundation of the genre, and just letting you guys know that. So when you hopefully after listening to this podcast, you go listen to the album if you haven't listened to it already, or you listen to the album, you can have a different appreciation for the album because the album does not beat the Fuji genre over its head in its production or its delivery, but the core tenets of the Fuji genre are found in the album. Does that make sense? So it's a complex, elevated understanding of what the genre is and what it can be and what it can influence. Another thing that I find very interesting about this album is that, like we've talked about this sampling, and I think I'll talk about sampling one more time in the course of this episode, but in the Fuji genre, it's very commonplace for people to take a trending song and make a Fuji version of it, like sing it in a Fuji way. It's very commonplace among Fuji musicians to take a trending song and just insert it into their set list and sing it as well. And Adekunle Gold honors that tradition in this album by sampling a lot. Like if you go through his records up until now, he samples here and there from time to time. Ire has a sample. There are different things that he does that have samples and different interpolations, but not as heavily as is on this record. And it's because of that reason, because it pays homage to the fact that this is how Fuji musicians usually perform. And I've talked about the tone of his voice, that rasp and that lived in Yorubaness, which Don Corleone is. I think if I'm thinking of the album, I'm thinking of the song that is very, I would say, the song that encapsulates all of what AG wants to do in paying homage to Fuji and elevating it. I'm thinking of Don Corleone specifically. The songwriting is immaculate, but it's also the delivery of the backing vocals, the drums, the production. That is it. That is it right there. It's that combination that makes it Fuji, but 2025, but elevated. So that is kind of the origin of Fuji. I just wanted to draw a direct comparison to how Fuji started and what the Fuji genre is versus how Adekunle Gold interprets it. Now, one thing I found so interesting, I only learned this throughout doing research for this episode, was that the name Fuji for the genre actually comes from the Japanese, or there's a Mount Fuji in Japan, and Alhaji Sikiru Ayinde Barrister, who is known by many to be the pioneer of the genre, was one that named the genre after Mount Fuji, because I believe the story goes that he saw a poster of Mount Fuji at an airport, and I think because Fuji is the highest peak of the mountain there or something like that, and he felt that this genre was the highest peak of innovation as well, so he names the genre Fuji after the Mount Fuji. So I think that's important to know, because a lot of people wrongly think that Fuji gets its name from Fuja, which means to flee, or Faji, which means enjoyment or pleasure in Yoruba. But no, 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 no. If this was a Jeopardy question, that would be wrong. The answer is that Ayinde Barista was inspired by a poster on the airport advertising Mount Fuji, which is the highest peak in Japan. And he was like, this is going to be the highest peak of genre in Nigeria. I'm going to call it Fuji. So that's how we get there. And AG did this cool thing where he, apart from obviously calling his album Fuji because it's inspired by the Fuji genre, he broke it down into an acronym called Finding Uncharted Journeys Inside. So in this way, he's saying that this album is not to be a nostalgic understanding of the Fuji genre, which means it's not going to be pastiche. It's not going to be, this is a Fuji album, this is Fuji over its head. It's a reinvention. It's like the Fuji of the past has inspired me to create the Fuji of the present, of the future. It's like a full circle moment to his Lagos upbringing, and the tone of the album. So that's our basis of understanding this album and understanding the Fuji music origin. So let's move on to talking about the clearance. I really, one of the things that when I was listening to the album, I was just so enamored about was, yo, how long did it take to clear these songs? One of the most notable interpolations on the album would definitely be in Coco Money. So in Coco Money, he interpolates Better Have My Money by Rihanna, and that is this recent song. It's a song that came out in recent history, and not only is it a recent song, it's one of Rihanna's biggest songs. So it's not a simple sample, and it involved negotiations with multiple people, including obviously Rihanna, Travis Scott, and Kanye West, who are people that worked on the record. So those songs, that's a lot of people to get clearance from, a lot of teams, a lot of emails, a lot of negotiations to get clearance from. So you would have had to have this song done and ready for a little while. So again, that amount of waiting and being ready and waiting for the right legal and strategic moment is very important in growing your artistry. I can't stress enough how important it is to understand the technical workings of the music industry as someone that makes music and makes art, because it's just so telling about different artists have different styles, but you can really tell where an artist's heart is by how they move in terms of things like this. So I want to quickly talk about the other samples and celebrations of the album. So on Big Fish, so Big Fish is the first song on the album, and when the song starts, you hear a sample of Lefty Salami, a 1960s Sakara musician. Then there's obviously many people, which obviously is probably one of the most viral tracks from the album. I remember my first listen of the album, and I was like, like the album is paced and track listed so well. So I'm just like listening to the album, like, okay, this is good, this is great. And I hear Yinka Ayefele's voice. I'm like, it's over. No, look, I'm listening to the album and I hear Yinka Ayefele. I'm like, no. I remember I was like, if you grew up in Nigeria, for me as a Christian, I grew up Christian. Every ride, not even every church ride, every time we get inside our car, no matter where we were going, there were some albums that were just in the car permanently. There was no streaming, so it was your parents' taste in music. I listened to gospel music till I turned, I don't know, maybe 14. Like that was all we listened to in my house, and I had something that my parents always ask me, where did I get the honors to make music from, which is so funny because they always had music playing at all points, always. But whenever we would get into the car and the Yinka Ayefele CD was in there, and if you know that those Yinka Ayefele songs, they are not 5 minutes, they are not 4 minutes. One track is like 20 minutes. Yinka Ayefele, RCCG, Choir, Lanre Teriba, Tope Alabi, like those people, you put those CDs in the car for the next, from beginning of the ride to the end of the ride, you are good. And many people is just one of, like, even in the song that many people, I think many people is from the Beruba Moniro, like I think from that album, that track. When that part comes on, because in the original, many people, Ayefele says, many people say Ayefele cannot stand because Ayefele uses a wheelchair. So it's like a very tongue in cheek, it's like this kind of gospel track, but then it takes like a second to diss his haters. So it's like, as a kid, I always kind of look forward to many people, because like many people, like it just comes on and it's say Ayefele only, like it's so like, it's just such a moment on that track. So when I was listening to the album and I heard, I was like, oh, it's over. So the many people sample is so effective, because, and then the fact that he got Ayefele to re-record his part to say the big fish thing is also so genius, because I really love the fact that Ayefele is living long enough to get his flowers as such an impactful musician to everyone that grew up listening to him. But just like the fact that Ayefele went to record this part, it's just so good, so good. There's a song on the album called Oba, which borrows from Asha's Iba as well. And yeah, so again, album full of samples, album full of interpolations, and those things have had to take time. I know in an interview, Adekunle Gold mentioned that he went to Ibadan to ask Yinka Ayefele if he would re-record his part, and Yinka Ayefele was so gracious to do so. And they did a really cool thing with the single, where like when the music video came out, the video had an extra feature. So yeah, so we've established sampling and why it's important to this project, but also why it's important to the genre's history, and again how all this ties into Adekunle Gold's persona himself. So we can move on to talking about his growth, using this album to talk about his growth. So I think that one of the things that's important about Adekunle Gold is that we know that each album contains a song that introduces the next sonic persona of the project. And since about 30, he's just very intentional about growing. But as he grows, he's intentional about taking the different parts of him along for the new task, whatever that new task could be. And we see that exemplified in no better way, or in no better what's the word I'm looking for? In no better form than how he rolls out his albums. So the rollout timeline and strategy for this album, again, a masterclass in just how to do it. I want to start by doing the singles rollout. So the first single off of Fuji was Bobo, and I think that is an interesting choice for a first single, because it is it's not just him. So Bobo is a single that features I believe, let me make sure I'm getting this correct, but Bobo features Loje and Shode, and it just, I think why it was chosen as the first single was probably because there's something joyful about that song. It's a very joyful song, and it's a song that is not self-serious. It is like, it doesn't have a bridge. It's like half of the chorus, AG's verse, and the length of the song is not a super long song, but it's a joyful song, and it's a song that he's literally singing about being a bobo with his boys, I guess. And so it sets a tone of like wealth and joy, and I think that's why it was chosen. So I think it was a good choice as a lead single. Then we go to Coco Money, which I think Coco Money is I think Coco Money is, in my thinking, Bobo is like a promotional single, but in my thinking, like, this is not in real life now, in my own precision of the album, Coco Money is the official lead single, if that makes any sense. I just feel like Coco Money is when I'm talking about all the themes I've mentioned earlier about the Fuji genre, I feel like Coco Money is the song that really kind of ties all that in for me. If that makes any sense, I think that Coco Money is a better, not a better, but like my own choice of this is what the album is. This is what the album is going to be. As like a song that introduces the album, I think Coco Money is where we like hit the nail on the head with that. And of course, then we had Believe come out after many people. I think many people, I don't know this for a fact, but I think that many people might have been made a single because of just the fan reaction to it, and understandably so, just a banger of a song, just like an absolute banger of a song. Now the rollout is amazing because let's start from Adekunle Gold. So if you're an Adekunle Gold fan, you know that Adekunle Gold sends us emails. He has been doing this for, I think, maybe since about 30. I think about 30 was when he started sending out the emails, and he's been sending them out consistently over this period over a period of times. And if you read those emails, they're actually very insightful. They are not fluff. Like he actually always has something to say and something to review when he sends that. Oh no, sorry, something is wrong. I need to correct myself. I knew something was wrong. Obi Mo came out before Bobo. Yes. I think Obi Mo is technically the first single of the album. And I think the reason why I probably forgot that is because it's just it's a great song. It's a cute song. It's a lovey-dovey song. But I think what Obi Mo serves as is a palette cleanser. So I think of Obi Mo being a palette cleanser to bridge from Age's last project to Fuji. So Obi Mo is quite a palette cleanser. I want to find out when he released Obi Mo actually, because I feel like that will help me have a better understanding of just in terms of timeline what they were going for. But I'm pretty sure Obi Mo is more of a palette cleanser. So Obi Mo came out in, drumroll please, February of this year. So February 12, which is 2 days before Valentine's Day. So Obi Mo is a love song, comes out before Valentine's Day. A palette cleanser. It's also the last song on the album, which to me is indicative of it being a palette cleanser. So not a song that in any way foreshadows what the album is going to be about, really. And but it's just like we've released the song. This is what to expect. Then Coco Money actually comes out before Bobo. So I apologize for misconstruing that. So Coco Money comes out July 18 and Bobo came out in September. So yeah, so apologies for that. So Obi Mo was the first single, which I think is a palette cleanser. Coco Money comes out next, which so that makes sense as the lead single for this record because of how it encapsulates what the record is going to be. Then Bobo comes out closer to the release of the album. Okay. Sorry, I got those dates kind of mixed up there. But yeah, we move on. So direct email marketing. So Adekunle Gold sends out these emails telling his fans what is happening and his personal reflection and whatever. So he sent a couple of those throughout the release of these, and those definitely keep you tinged to the fact that something is coming. And the next strategy that I think is very important about this record is the timing of the release. Now, the album dropped in early October, and that's very interesting because, as we know, December in Nigeria and Lagos is Dirty December is a whole thing, right? And I think that by releasing the album in early October to get people for an album that will work so well in Dirty December, but releasing an album then kind of like puts people on tinge of what's about to come, and like this is going to be my record for December, right? It's a palette preparer in that way. And another cool thing, and I'm not sure if this is something that they could have planned for, was that I remember I think the only major release that came out when Adekunle Gold released Fuji was Taylor Swift's Life of a Showgirl, which Taylor Swift and Adekunle Gold are not exactly fighting for the same target audience, so that works out well. But I do remember that the airwaves were kind of clear for us to really receive Fuji. I remember thinking that when it came out, like, okay, there's really no other album right now that of an artist on Adekunle Gold's level specifically that is vying for attention. So it did come out at a time where people could really receive it because the airwaves, like for the African popular music Afrobeats listener, was pretty clear, and AG was everywhere. Let me tell you something. The whatever podcast, Spotify concert, you know what if he could be there, he was going to be there. Like, I sometimes, like, we were like, he might come up to your dream and ask you to stream his album. So I mean, that's always been his strategy. He's not someone that is shy of promoting his work. And why would you be shy of promoting an album that is so amazing? I'm saying, like, when you make great work, you want to be everywhere. But he was everywhere that he could be, he was. And also preparing for different types of shows, preparing for his London show with the orchestra. Everywhere that he could be, he was. And that also, I think, coupled with the visual storytelling of the visuals, the pictures that came out of the fashions, him going to these different fashion events and things of that nature, just really, really blended in to tell the story of an album that was expensive but fun, and African but evolved and worldly, like everything that he did in this rollout. So with the marketing and the timing and this visual storytelling and the everywhere all at once vibe, we really are telling a cohesive story that doesn't confuse the listener or anyone that's supposed to receive the record. So if you, I'm not an Adekunle Gold fan, and you were just hearing about this album on the peripheries of conversation, you would still know what the album was about without even being tuned in or locked in. Another cool thing that he did with this record that I thought was I don't think I've seen anyone else do this, was that he didn't release the feature list of the album. So when you listen to the album when it came out on the day it arrived, all you saw were the track names. And as you listen to the tracks, you start to hear other voices. And it was until I think a week after the album had come out that the tracks on streaming got their the artist names attached to them, which was I thought a very great strategy. Risky strategy, but great, because I think risky because he had so many hard hitters on this album that the things people would think was like, if I have an album that has Black on it, if I have an album that has Ayefele singing on it, if I have an album that has Cross Santino singing on it, I'm gonna let people know. I'm going to let people know that these people are on my album. Robert Glasper. If I had these people on my album, he was like, no, I actually want people to receive this album without any expectations and listen to it top to bottom and be surprised. The only other person I've seen do something similar to this was when Beyonce released a self-titled album on December 13, 2013. You know where you were. You know where you were when everyone was like, she dropped an album, every song has a music video, it's on iTunes. What? Yeah, no, that was another moment in time where it was just like, she what? Again, she what? What? So like that's kind of the vibe that I got from that. Like, listen to the album, I'm like, oh my god, is that Santi? What is that? I feel like that feeling of like, what's going on? Like, it's such in a world where there's so much put on promotional strategies to tell people what to expect, to prep people to understand things. Being able to surprise your audience is such, when you can, you should, like when you can, if you have the wherewithal to, you should. Because again, this is his 6th album in, he can afford to hide features. Maybe for you, if this is your 2nd album and you have a hard hitter on your album, you want people to know so they can see the album because of the hard hitter. But if you can't afford to do so, when you can afford to do so, it is just masterful. As a listener, it's such a gratifying experience. Like, oh my god, like, that's Black. What is he doing here? And Davido was, I think like that was the one that took me by the most surprise, was on Only God Can Save Me. I'm like, is that David? That's David. That's David on this, and only to find out later. And then even just that moment of confusion when you're listening to an album and you're looking at the track list and you don't see anyone's name there, then you go to the credits like, oh, I see his name here, and then it's like, oh, this person was featured. Just an exciting thing to experience as a listener. yeah, so that is a bit about the rollout and all the things I've learned from the rollout. Again, if you have thoughts that I am not covering, please do share with the class. I will appreciate them in the comment section, and been on the platform that you're listening to this on. Yeah, I would love to hear from you guys on what you took away. Okay, let's move on a bit quicker amongst things. So I want to talk a bit about world building, and my other points. I think I'm going to breeze past a bit more. Um, I've talked about him calling the album Fuji, but not beating it over the head. And the cover art is the cover. Hey, H factor. Yeesh. The cover art. The cover art is my favorite exemplary of this, where he's in a vibrant suit, um, but he's sitting on an Owambe chair. You know, like there, he could have been in an agbada or something, which would have been very, okay, Fuji agbada, but picking that out and deciding how he was going to navigate that and picking such a specific, and again AG is so good with colors, because that red and blue, it just sticks in your mind. It's impactful, like that color theory is just so, it's great. I love it so much. So I think that another thing I love about, we talked about the samples. I don't think I talked about how believe, I think believe currently, and this has been the story for a while. Believe has been my favorite. Believe is my, on my Spotify on repeat right now. Believe is my most listened to song. I can't stop listening to it. It's just, it's just it works. Like when a song just works in a way that I can't get over how much I love the song. You know what I'm saying? Believe just works. It samples Bill Withers, and again that's another expensive sample, I'm sure. But it's just a song that works. The melody works, the songwriting works, the vocal delivery. I think the vocal delivery is actually what pulled me in. He sounds so smooth on it, and the production everything just works on that song. I love it so much. Yeah, okay. I want to talk a bit about some critical reception to the album. I think on a whole, people have loved it and it's been received very well. But there have been some controversies about him, for example, naming the album Fuji. Some people online were like, I don't know if you can do that. So people have said that he's using that as a marketing ploy, that um the critique I've seen the most is that he has tried different sounds, but because the sounds do not work, he is now going back to his roots, and he's using, like, basically, like, he's being disingenuous about why he's using Fuji, and does he have the rights to do that? And I don't have any thoughts on these critiques. I think it's important, especially if I want this podcast to be like some type of historical document, to mention that the critics, like, obviously, like, not everybody loved it, and not everybody found the concepts to work or to be tight. Yeah, there is a skeptical take on the album for sure. I don't know if something that I want to give my thoughts on, mostly because I don't have. That's not one thing about me. I don't have a thought about every single thing. I don't. I don't think that's the case. But again, as I've established earlier in this podcast, I'm a diehard Adekunle Gold fan. So I would definitely always lean towards believing that he is taking the authentic route, doing something that's supposed to be the disingenuous one. So yeah, I don't know if that's the case, but that's how some people have seen it, and it's just worth mentioning. So I've mentioned it. Yeah, I think that my my um my love for AG, and I think in this past time that we've talked about this album, is really just just the growth. The growth is amazing to me, and I think that this album sounds like a celebration. The songwriting is immaculate, and I think that we've kind of talked about all my main tenets for why I love the record. But because there are questions I want to throw out to you to think through as you think back on this episode, if you're going to listen to it again, or when you listen to the album, is that, well, we can start from the critiques. So do you, from what I've shared and what you know, and if you want to do your own findings, it's not wow, do your own findings. Do you think that I don't know. I don't even have to phrase the question, but do you think that the criticism of him using Fuji is fair? That, or do you think gatekeeping a genre is unproductive? Like, I just feel like if anybody can name their album Fuji, it's Adekunle Gold. You know what I'm saying? Which is why I kind of built the case around who he is, and how he grew up, and his history. So I do think that, like, it's not like, some random person in California called the album Fuji. I think if anybody can call the album Fuji and do what he did, it's him. But do you think differently? Like, if you do think differently, I'm actually curious to know why. And what do you think about the rollout? I find the rollout to be very stunning. I think it's very singular. But if, like, I'm just curious to see what other people think about the rollouts. And I don't say that other Afrobeat artists are lazy. I won't say that. I won't say other Afrobeat artists are lazy. I won't say that. Yeah, I won't say that. But I'm curious. I'm curious for anyone to, share with me an artist that has had a similar rollout strategy that has been as thoughtful as the one for Fuji. I'm actually very curious to know what people would say about that. Those are questions I want to leave you guys with, I think. But yeah, that's been me yapping about Adekunle Gold's Fuji. This was so much fun. So much fun. Yeah, I think the only thing that and I'll leave it in just because it's part of my process, I mixed up the dates for the singles in my notes, which I apologize for, but I will just go back again. Say Obimo came out first, then Coco Money came out first, then Coco Money came out after, then Bobo came out last. Those are the order of the singles, and I think that works because Obimo was the palette cleanser. Coco Money is a great tease of what the album is, and Bobo, Bobo is just a bop, just a bop to get you excited for the record. So yeah, and then the album came out, and then we had Believe by many people, and yeah, I think that's all I want to share about the album. Oh, I think one more thing is that there's a song on the album called Simile, and I don't know if Simile is a Yoruba word. No one has been able to answer my question on this. Like, what does Simile mean? I know that he wrote that song for Beyonce's The Gift album, but it didn't end up working because he wrote the song around when his father died. So he wrote the song for when his father died, sent it to Beyonce. The team didn't use it. Then he kept it and he puts it on this album. So I don't know what Simile actually means. I don't think it's a Yoruba word. And if it's a Yoruba word, does anybody know what it means? I don't know what that word means. So if somebody can answer that question for me, that would be great. I know I've been asking questions and asking for answers, and in case you are not able to put it in the comment section on my Instagram or anywhere else, you can send it to me at adeoluwamusic@gmail.com. Your thoughts, your comments, your concerns, I would actually be so glad to listen. And I know I mentioned Adekunle Gold's best friend Sheifumi Michael earlier when I was talking about him growing up and going to churches to sing and minister. But I don't know if I said his name properly. But Sheifumi has a lot of records on this. They've been working together from time. They were in a band together. They have a long-term partnership. But on this record, I think this is the most he has contributed to Adekunle Gold's record in terms of writing and production. I think that's very important to mention as well. Okay, and we're at the end of the episode. Thank you for listening. If you listened this long, I love you and I really appreciate you listening. Should I tease what the next episode will be? I don't know. I feel like I think starting after this episode, the next episode, I'll start teasing what the next episode would be. I'm still working on it, but you will obviously hear from me very soon. And please be kind to yourself. I want to close out by saying something that one of my favorite YouTubers, Herbie Revola, says. Because I just think it's so poignant and I try to remind myself of it every single day. I am in a constant state of practice, and so are you. You can never fail if you're in a constant state of practice. Stay crowned, and I'll see you later. Bye, guys.